I could be your hero, but I can't get out of bed. There's too much in my head. I could be more faithful, but I fail at that habit. So I run around instead. I wanna be good to myself, love hard to breathe more, drink less. I wanna be seen at my best, sleep more, be nice a lot less. All I need is 21 days and I'm fine. January 1, I'ma still need more time. Every single year, yeah, it never fails, I try. But maybe I don't ever wanna put down this life. I could be your best friend, but I can't pick up my phone. Let it ring cause no one's home. I'm always judging and degrading. I should stop all that, I'm sure, but I'm just too insecure. I wanna be good to myself, love hard to breathe more, drink less. I wanna be seen at my best, sleep more, be nice a lot less. All I need is 21 days and I'm fine. January 1, I'ma still need more time. Every single year, yeah, it never fails, I try. But maybe I don't ever wanna put down this life. All I need is 21 days and I'm fine. January 1, I'ma still need more time. Every single year, yeah, it never fails, I try. But maybe I don't ever wanna put down this life.
Start thinking, all the details start to sink in. No, I don't care about the right now. Spend the summer in this beach house. Cause I will try to play my part. My lies memorized. I just can't focus. I love to hear your crazy theories about conspiracies on TV. I know the truth and it's so simple. Blame it all on stupid impulse, and I keep living out of my head. Just forgive me for my silence. Cause I will try to play my part.
walking down the boulevard. She got the posture of a superstar. She looks so fly in those Gucci slides. Yeah, I wonder what she hides under her disguise. Yeah. And all the girls around the world, they wanna be her. And all the dudes are trying to score like it's fever. She lives a double life, puts on a show. What's under the subtle smile, we'll never know. She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her. There must be something that...
Hello there, everyone. How are we all? I'm obviously very well, thank you for asking. Joining me for a chat about a serious topic that's become not serious because the social medias is ridiculous, it's MxVivianWulf. Hello there.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
I'm very well. Yes. Yes. So, why don't you tell everyone about you?
Sure thing. My name is MxVivianWulf. That's an MX. Oh, look at that. That's something special. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I'm MxVivianWulf on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, and I mainly talk about cults and extremism. But I'm also a trans feminine person, so I get drawn into a lot of LGBT debates as well. That's pretty much me.
Yeah. So you like my little checkerboard pattern thing I did?
Yeah, it's very it's definitely something.
Yes. My Microsoft Paint skills are second to everyone.
Far too many faces in one place.
Well, I was going to make it even weirder and make do distorted faces or something. Then I thought, no, don't do that, Kev. That's like that would be weird. Anyway, so yes, we're here today to talk about de-radicalization, amongst other things. I'm sure we'll get into other topics as well, but specifically about people from the right becoming not far right anymore and all of that sort of stuff, sparked off by a Twitter debate. And we got chatting a little bit in the chat of Lottie Blix, who's a fantastic streamer. You should all go and follow on Twitch. And you had some hot takes, I think.
Yeah. Maybe, according to some people. One person's hot take is another person's common sense, I suppose.
Yes.
I don't know.
Indeed. So we'll go to the original tweet, which sparked this whole discussion, I suppose. I mean, to be fair, it's a bit of sort of internet drama, I suppose, more than anything, because personalities get involved and all the rest of it. I'll share the thing I'm showing with you. Here we go, in the Discord. So, yes, the initial tweet itself is now unviewable to me because I don't follow the original person, and they've privated their account.
Locked their account, yeah, that makes sense.
Which is understandable because some bigger YouTubers, who I think might get a name check at some point later on, decided to jump in on the discourse. And as ever, white people don't make the situation better. Anyway, so
sometimes, yeah.
Yes, as two white people talking, you know, that's the way that goes. Yeah. So, a person called Commie Activity says, and you wonder why people don't trust white leftists. And as you can see here, it's an original discussion between two people, where someone says, everyone sucked when they were a teenager, forgive them. And then someone comes up with, true, I was a Nazi, I'm so much better now. And then there's the meme of the black woman looking exasperated, let's say. Which is an odd point to begin with, isn't it? That the idea that it's sort of normal to have a Nazi phase.
Yeah.
That's like, is it possible that just because internet discourse is so fucking toxic, that it seems, if you're a terminally online person like I, and possibly yourself, you can describe yourself in your own way, that it seems less weird that someone would have a Nazi phase? Like normal people outside of that would think that was more peculiar than it necessarily seems when you're dealing with Nazis on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to the average person, like having a Nazi phase is not a normal thing. I try and stray away from like saying that things are like normal or not. like especially with regards to like cults and extremism, because I think everybody's kind of vulnerable to that sort of indoctrination, and therefore, like, it's a normal thing for somebody to be indoctrinated into it. You know, if I say that this is not normal, I'd have to say that, for example, being trans is not normal. I'd imagine there's a lot less trans people than there are people who had at least a far right phase, right? So,
Probably,
like,
yeah.
I think it's a normal thing that some people end up getting sucked into, but that doesn't mean that it's something that we should be like, oh, that's perfectly fine, don't worry about it, you know. Like,
Well, would a change of or a change of word there from, say, normal, which has a sort of almost like a moral quality to it, to something like ordinary? Would that be a better
yeah,
word to use? Because then that would encompass things like transness or whatever, because that is
yeah,
just a
yeah,
normal thing that normal people engage, or not engage in, but are, you know?
yeah. I wouldn't say it's a usual thing. It's an unusual thing. It's
Yeah.
a rare thing. Yeah.
True, but then again, like,
Hopefully.
I
Oh,
think
sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say you can boil that down to anything, because virtually even mainstream, say, social groupings of people, whether it be based on some sort of a like of a certain type of music or whatever, or whatever particular cultural niche, is always a minority. There are very few
Yeah,
things that
yeah.
are done by a majority of people.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, which such is the diverse nature of modern society, I suppose. Yes. So anyway, the original tweet. Someone called Logan, socialist of the court, not me, Logan. Okay. Hashtag not all Logans. Says, what if people could change from when they were in high school? And then the original poster says, what if it's absolutely not normal to have a Nazi face to begin with, and no one should be expected to feel safe around this person? Which brings up a couple of interesting points. We've already, I suppose, discussed the normal aspect of that. But the idea that a person is being expected to feel safe around a person,
Mm.
because that's not strictly speaking said in the original tweet, but I suppose it's a part of the larger discussion. At what point does a person become de-radicalized enough? Does one expect to be forgiven for a Nazi phase? That sort of stuff. Like, what's your general take on that?
My take on that is that I speak to what people in the sort of like extremism biz call formers really quite regularly, right? I talk to people who are like ex-Nazis, ex-cult members, like all the time, because they have a very unique perspective. We have a lot that we can learn from them, but it's not. Oh, geez. In terms of like people being expected to feel safe around them, like I have contact with these people for a very specific reason, right? I want to help people out of far right extremism. I think the world's a better place the less people that are like far right extremists, obviously. But it's also personal. You know, forgiveness is one of those things that's very individual, and I think enforcing this this broad societal standard for when a person should or should not be forgiven is extraordinarily harmful, and just ever so slightly cult-like as well. It's just like, here is the level at which a person is okay and no longer a suppressive personality, and we can accept them into our community. It shouldn't be a broad societal decision. It's very much an individual decision, as to when somebody feels comfortable around somebody else that may have done harm to the group that they're part of, done harm to them specifically, been part of a group that's done harm to them specifically, etc. Right? Like, it all depends on individual circumstances. My reaction as like a white Western leftist might be very different from, like, I don't know, some Jewish person whose grandparents died in Auschwitz. Like, there's going to be it's a very personal decision. I think try to force that on other people's bad.
True, yeah. But I mean, you are a part of a marginalised group who are often attacked by Nazis. And again, Nazis being used as a slightly catch-all phrase here, because I don't know if this person was strictly speaking a Nazi, and when it gets discussed, it's used as a kind of more broad phrase for just a sort of general fascist or far right
Yeah,
person.
I've heard a lot of people saying this person was just watched some Stefan Molyneux videos or something, and I'm like, is she describing herself as a Nazi but not actually a Nazi? And if so, I really wish people wouldn't. I really wish they wouldn't, because as a researcher, as a lifelong, well, not lifelong, but as a very long-term anti-fascist, I'm really, really careful about who I call a Nazi. There are people. I had a huge fucking argument with some dude recently, and because ultimately I kind of had to, right? Because he was part of a community that I was in, who was openly saying he was a civic nationalist, and I had to, sort of demonstrate how civic nationalism is essentially fascism to the community that I was a part of, right? But I didn't once call him a Nazi, right?
Yeah.
Even though that, Nazism, fascism, ultimately, publicly, I think we should probably deal with them pretty much in the same way. I think being specific about this is important, because then you fall into the whole that right-wing propagandist talking point of, Antifa just calls everybody they don't like a Nazi, right? I think generally that's not true, and anti-fascists and researchers particularly are very, very specific and usually have a decent amount of evidence to back up when they level the accusation of somebody being a Nazi, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just wish people in the general public wouldn't do this.
True, yes, absolutely. And I think this person is, like you say, potentially using it in a rather more loose fashion than is really ideal. But let's just say fash then for this, or far right for the more catch-all phrase. As a person from a group, a marginalised group, who are often targeted by the far right, in slightly different ways than maybe racial groupings, but even so. What's your general policy? And again, it's going to be sort of individual, I suppose, but what's your general take on what a person has to do in order for you to feel comfortable that they've genuinely become not a complete arsehole anymore, if that makes sense?
Well, I think it's a journey, and I think it's all about attitudes. So there was a woman who replied to my tweet with her own kind of thing, and full disclosure, I know her tangentially. I know her through another fellow researcher, but she's Shannon Foley Martinez, who was like a hardcore neo-Nazi, right? And she wrote a really good thread where she was talking about how she doesn't expect. Here it is. Yeah. I suppose I can just fucking link that to you in our DM as well, so you know what I'm looking at. But she said, she makes sure other people know her past so they can decide if they're okay working alongside her. If they aren't, she'll step down. She doesn't want to cause further hurt and pain to people, forcing herself on them. She doesn't live her life seeking forgiveness, which is not hers to demand. She lives her life committed to ongoing healing, working always to unearth and understand how I gave myself my assent to something so vile, making amends, and trying not to do further harm, right? And she mentions also that it's it's an ongoing project, essentially. The project of sort of pulling yourself out of that sort of stuff. And, I think it is an ongoing project for all of us. I don't think, that's why we say, you just have to constantly be vigilant against fascism, because the ideas that sort of propagate it are really easy to come by. And, but, especially when you've been in it yourself, it's I don't think it's something that you... I don't know. I guess my point is, right, I don't think people should be seeking to say, I've left this now and now everybody has to accept me. I'm going to go and do a book deal and you should all listen to me about my former life as an extremist and heap praise on me for escaping, blah, blah, blah. The fact is, you fucked up, right? You fucked up, and it's not... I think Chud said something about repentance. It's not repentance in the religious sense, but it's showing that attitude of recognizing that you fucked up and wanting to make it right.
Yeah.
Like, because that's not, it's not necessarily about the action, but the desire to do that shows that you are at least sincerely on the path to trying to make shit right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the important thing for me. And then I guess it would be like, individual beliefs and so on, and how they treat the people around them, like, as to like, so if I started working with a former who just left a neo-Nazi group, right? Like, I'm not going to be introducing them to all my friends or whatever, right? Like, I'll keep them separate from other groups, especially groups that like have marginalized people in there that could be hurt by them.
Yeah.
But you just sort of like, you wait and observe and you see how they interact with stuff, and you see what kind, if they've really taken on the beliefs that they kind of say they have around marginalized people and so on. It's a very individual thing. Like I said earlier, it's an individual thing for the forgiveness, right? So it's an individual thing for deciding whether or not you feel safe around a particular individual, and you can only really judge that based on the behavior that they display.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The way I describe that kind of difference is the difference between apologizing and just saying sorry. You can have vague platitudes about how, I'm not a Nazi anymore, and actually wanting to not just rectify the harm you've done, but genuinely be a more positive force in the world around you, and rectifying the behaviour that led you there in the first place.
Yeah. So we have a lot of problems with this, like in the counter-extremism community, where you have like certain groups who are set up as being like de-radicalization pathways or offboarding people from white supremacism and so on. And some of these groups are sort of more, in my opinion at least, more trustworthy than others. You have one group in particular, Light Upon Light, and Jesse Morton. Quilliam's another good example. If you think about England, you might know Quilliam from Majid Nawaz and Tommy Robinson, right?
Yeah.
Who will take somebody like Tommy Robinson, in the case of Quilliam, or in the case of Light Upon Light, like they took Jeff Scoop, the erstwhile leader of the National Socialist Movement, and that person will be like, oh, I'm leaving the right now. And then that'll be it, right? They'll be like, yes, come and be a part of our organization, help advise us on white supremacism. We'll give you a book deal. We'll give you a platform. We'll tell the public how much you've changed and how much of an asset you are to us, right? And obviously, you know how that ended up with Tommy Robinson, right? Like, he's not changed.
No, he's arguably gotten worse, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And similarly with like Jeff Scoop, I think, he's a little bit harder to judge, but at least immediately after he was like put on that platform, he then like set up a community to raise money for the guy who was imprisoned for Heather Heyer's killing, called the National Socialist Coalition something, like, and he went on a podcast talking about how he still had a lot of issues with the Jewish question. And clearly this is a person who, if you want them to be quote unquote growing and learning and healing and stuff, like, you shouldn't be touting them as your token D-rad. And there's far too much impetus towards that within these circles. It's like, if you get somebody big, a large content creator or a leader within white power or whatever, who says, oh, I want to leave, there's a real kind of motivation to go, hey, look at the big fish that I helped de-radicalize and pull out of the alt-right, right? Like, they're held up. I call them trophy D-rads, right? And you could say that about like Jeff Scoop or Tommy Robinson or like Hunter Avallone for Vosh, if you want an example in this community, right?
Yeah, there's I think with people like Quilliam, and we'll keep Vosh to the back burner. I know you're desperate to cause drama, but we don't do that here.
I'm not.
Outrageous behaviour. This is why I was reticent to get MxVivianWulf on, because they will absolutely go crazy for the drama. It's mad. I'm only
don't, because people will actually believe that. You know that.
I'm playing. No. They're a really like sensible, nice person. Anyway, whereas I am a gutter snipe. Anyway. Yes, I was going to say with people like Quilliam, I think it's as you say, like it's a kind of trophy thing. They want the publicity. It's almost like, and it's not. It's odd because they'll often accuse other people of virtue signaling, but essentially what they're doing is basically virtue signaling. They're saying, "Look how great we are. We got Tommy Robinson," but all you did was get him to say, "Oh yeah, the English Defence League is shit" at a news conference. He's still doing the exact same shit, just under a new guise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and Quilliam has like a shitload of its own fucking problems anyway. Like, yeah. I that's the other thing, you know, a lot of those kinds of groups, like usually one of the biggest red flags is that they're way more focused on Islamic extremism than anything else, and they turn into like anti-Islamic groups, which is.
Yeah, exactly.
Which makes Tommy Robinson very attractive for them.
Well, exactly, yeah. And Tommy Robinson can still be that anti-Islamic nutcase, but just pretend that the far right element of that has gone, and he fits in perfectly with them, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But I think actually back to Shannon, what Shannon says here, I think this is a fantastic way of putting it. She says, "I've been out of Nazi bullshit for 25 years, and this is still ongoing work." So 25 years later, it's still ongoing. It will be until my last breath. Healing isn't linear. As I gain better skills, tools, and insight, new layers of work yet to be done emerge. Anyone who says differently isn't interested in healing. And I think that's sort of a rather nice way of summing it up. That if all you're interested in saying is...
now, it's the "I'm better now, you should forgive me" narrative that like just instantly sets off fucking alarm bells for me. Whereas like somebody like Shannon, I mean, either she's got the incredible gift of the gab, or she genuinely believes what she's saying, and she's like genuinely trying to be a better person than she was. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's if 25 years later she's still doing it, she's playing the very, very long game with the grift. Like that's a pretty fucking intense piece of work. If that's what, like, to the point where after 25 years, I almost don't care whether it is like, if you've done 25 years of good work, like you've failed at your trolling attempt, I think. Really?
No, I mean, I wasn't saying that she's like a grifter or whatever, but I was just, I was leaving, I wasn't either. That possibility. Sure.
Yeah. Yes, but
I think she's sincere. Having spoken to her, I think she's sincere. Yeah.
Okay. So she was. So like I say, people who aren't in, who say that like it's a complete conclusion to what they are, and that there's no further work needed. I think, like you say, like she says, I should say, aren't interested in healing. They're not. That's a difference between saying sorry and actually apologising. You're just saying the words, and that's not really of any use. If anything, it could be worse because it gives you a false sense of that work having been done when clearly you haven't actually tackled your own prejudices at all.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yes, so that was the original take, and you posted a thread on it yourself, which I would advise people to go and read. Your Twitter is below, and go and follow MxVivianWulf on all the media sites. They're below. They're linked below. Go and do it now. Yes, and then we got chatting, like I say, in the chat of Lottie Blix's stream, which was very good as well. Go and check out that for an interesting, nuanced take on things. And then, because there'd been a number of other, let's say, larger, whiter people who'd gotten involved in the conversation, which obviously led to this person literally privating their account and stuff. Before we get,
I think one of the things that like stuck out to me, like, and I fucking hate doing this, but it was so difficult not to in this situation to like look at the people who were sort of like siding with the Vosh take, and like so many of them just looked like Vosh in their profile picture, right? just like slightly chubby, bearded, white leftists, right? Like,
okay, there's no need for a personal call out. What's going on here? What?
No offense there, Kev. But yeah,
The cap fits. Yeah.
The point I'm making there is like these are people who, for them, this is about being morally good and about being intelligent and having the right take, right?
Right.
Whereas like for those marginalized people, right, those black people, those trans people or whatever, saying, I don't want a former Nazi anywhere near me or the people I care about, right? Like this isn't necessarily about like having a good take for them. It's not about like, you know, being intelligent and winning a debate on Twitter. It's about making sure the people, you know, the people they care about themselves and the people they care about are kept safe. And you know, as somebody who isn't or hasn't experienced the hate that gets chucked the way of like marginalized groups, you might think that they're kind of overreacting. You might think that they're judging this person really harshly, or that like, you know, there's no potential harm really that could be done by sort of just accepting somebody and forgiving them once they've apologized. But you know, this is why I say it has to be an individual decision, right?
Yeah.
And absolutely not like random fucking internet quote unquote leftist like telling everybody when somebody ought to be forgiven or when they ought not to be. Because ultimately like him or any of the other people like supporting this take aren't the people who are going to be victimized if it turns out that this person's still a total shitter, right?
Yeah. So in response to the original tweet, which like I say you can't see now because the account's privated, but just for full clarification, that is, I promise you, that is the tweet that's being responded to. Vosh, and I'll just read out, there's a little 3 tweets here, verbatim, and then we can get into it. Quote, "Thank you for telling every young person rushed, groomed or indoctrinated into far-right ideology that they are permanently tainted and there's no point in them de-radicalizing and moving left because they'll never be accepted." And then the second one is, "I'm sure they'll be way less of a threat to marginalised people as a neo-Nazi than as a de-radicalised leftist who used to be a neo-Nazi. Good save. Gotta keep the social space pure." And then the third one is, "Leftists believe in rehabilitative justice, by the way, reform and redemption, by the way." So, you had a somewhat negative response to that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like fairly negative. I wasn't like, I used his tweet to make a statement about the situation rather than just being like, Vosh is a fucking idiot, blah, blah, blah. Like, that wasn't how I responded.
Clip that bit. Clip that bit for the drama, yeah.
Vosh is a fucking idiot, but, you know, any fucking leftist who gets on the platform and is like, I'd like to educate everybody on communism. We need to reintegrate the fucking vanguard party into the means of production. That's a literal quote. Like, holy fucking shit, dude. Obviously, you don't know what you're talking about, but that's fine. He knows a lot about a lot of other stuff. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, when I said that MxVivianWulf likes the drama, I was joking. But they took it there anyway, so I mean, I'm not starting drama. I'm just really. Hang on, you can't say this person is a fucking idiot and then say I'm not doing drama.
Okay, fine. Yeah, maybe a fucking idiot is a bit strong, but I'm just very fucking bored of like, and I've said this on my Twitter before, but just not just Vosh, but like a whole bunch of people, and you might fall slightly under this, so sorry if you do, but a load of people who spend a lot of time like preaching about this sort of stuff. I think you're a lot better because you try and understand like the struggles of marginalized individuals and so on. But yeah, they'll talk all the theory stuff and then they'll get in a big fucking argument about like black nationalism or something, or like indigenous spirituality, and have no sort of like sympathy for the people who are actually a part of the movement that they're trying to like push forward.
No, well,
anyway, we're getting really past.
Like, just to defend myself, because as a white man on the internet, I can't allow a slight to pass. No, I don't fall under that at all. No, I was very critical of Vosh's take on black nationalism, comparing it to like neo-Nazism and shit. Like that was fucking dense. Yeah. Just as a clarification.
I think when I said you might fall under it, I was literally just going to say like white Western lefty theory bros who think that like preaching fucking Marx to people is the way to push the movement forward and have no idea, no concept of what street activism is like, or community organizing, community building, like the stuff that actually makes leftist movements and institutions function.
Well,
like you don't walk up on knock on somebody's door and say, hey, can I have an hour to talk to you about the first like paragraph of Capital, please? Like, do you know what I mean?
Have you heard the good news about Marx? Yeah.
Awaken the lumpen proletariat. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
What?
Exactly.
Like, this shit doesn't get anybody on board.
No, I understand why you would lump me in, because I am a disgusting white heterosexual man, and as such, come the revolution, we know what's happening there. But but yeah, that's fine.
You'll be incorporated into the means of production.
I will, absolutely. Well, I am a vanguard in many respects. Yes, and as a trade union organizer, I'm fully aware of the hard work that goes on, and so I don't try and sort of talk down to people or whatever. Not that I'm accusing Vosh of that. I'm not doing drama. That's MxVivianWulf's territory.
Fuck it, it's all right. Me and Vosh hate each other. We know that.
Okay, well, it's odd because leftists usually get on really well, as we know from history. It's a complicated thing. Yes. So yes. I asked you in the chat of Lottie Blix's thing last night. I asked more generally to people in the chat, how they felt about the de-radicalization that Vosh undertakes, and you scoffed at the term de-radicalization.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, why was there a scoffing involved there?
Because it smacks of the deprogramming rhetoric of like the fucking the 70s and 80s. It feels like placing a lot of the credit and responsibility for somebody's reform on the person who is doing the thing, or the person who is like preaching the lefty rhetoric, right? Whereas like a lot of the motivation and so on for reform doesn't come from fucking YouTube videos. Yeah. Okay. So let me see. There's a lot of people, right? A lot of people looking currently for answers as to how to like get people out of like QAnon, right? And for a long time, there've been people looking for answers as to how to get people out of cults, how to get a family member out who's like falling down some kind of extremist pipeline, right?
Yeah.
And there's been so much research done on it for decades, right? And nobody has a solid universal strategy that allows you to reach into one of these movements, find an individual and pull them out of it, right? Like with all the sort of agency on the person doing the quote unquote de-radicalization, right? Generally what has to happen is something has to change in that person's own life in order to motivate them towards wanting to maybe explore other options. Daryl Lamont Jenkins, who's a guy I've spoken to, he runs the One People's Project, which is like this anti-fascist organization in Brunswick, New Jersey. He, like, their organization has a policy they call like showing hate an open door, right? Which means that like if people come to them wanting some kind of way out of white power, they're perfectly willing to like facilitate that. I think there was a short film made about it, how he like helped raise funds to get this neo-Nazis tattoos removed, right? It's that sort of work, reintegrating people back into general society, trying to help them shed the sort of trappings of their former life. That's to me what like real exit work looks like. So, and I call it exit work because I don't like that term de-radicalization, just generally because it places so much agency on the person and it holds them up as like a quasi celebrity, like I can go in and I can get the people out. And do you know what I mean? And it's just not a realistic way that things happen. Now, I'm not saying that like the things that Vosh or a whole bunch of other people do in analyzing and countering right-wing propaganda and talking points isn't incredibly useful. Absolutely, viewing some of this material can definitely be a part of somebody's learning process, helping them to sort out some of the thoughts in their head as to like why they, how they were caught up in these beliefs, why these beliefs are actually wrong, etc., etc., etc. Like, they can provide an opportunity for self-motivated offboarding from extremism, if that makes sense, right? But they'll have to be engaging with the content and saying, actually, maybe there's some stuff that I don't have quite right. I'll explore this. Oh, this guy's like teaching me about this, and so on, right? Like, so yeah. And an important part of anti-fascist work is countering alt-right propaganda. Like, and online creators do that like all the fucking time, right? Explain why it's bullshit, usually in long ass fucking paragraphs, which is not as effective as the far right's quick snappy talking points.
It's a bit, the left is often mucho text though, definitely.
Mucho text. I mean, I'm doing that right now, aren't I? But that's fine.
Well, you're a guest. I've invited you on to speak, so that's fine.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that these people are completely useless. I just hate the fucking term de-radicalization, and I don't see a lot of serious researchers or whatever use it. Right? I think one of the main things. So back when do you know Faraday Speaks?
I do. Yeah, I've spoken to him a couple of times.
Yeah. He's a good friend. So
he was the guy. Yeah, he was the guy that was on the front page of the New York Times.
Yeah, front page of the New York Times. Yeah. And a lot of these articles sort of started popping up in the media, right? That were about de-radicalizing people from the alt-right, crediting people like Destiny, ContraPoints, Faraday to some extent, and so on, for the de-radicalization of people. And it wasn't really like a serious sort of scholarly term. It's just sort of, it sounds really great. And that's the comparison I drew to like deprogramming, right? In the sort of 70s and 80s. It was like, the cult deprogrammers, like these celebrity people who could get your family member out of a cult by kidnapping them and locking them in a cabin in the woods and shouting at them for a couple of days. Like, and all the agency is placed on the sort of celebrity de-radicalizer, deprogrammer or whatever, and none of it is placed on the individual. And I think it's a real mistake in thinking about how people leave extremist movements. You have to create these communities and spaces that people can move to, and you have to keep people who are in extremist movements aware that there is another place that they can go to. But outside of that, you don't have a lot of agency in how their mind works and what they're thinking and what they're believing,
Yeah, absolutely. Very fine point. I think it's interesting that you mentioned Destiny. If we could take a slight detour, but I think still kind of relevant. Sure. It was you that were on the call with Destiny when he made his did his famous Rittenhouse gunning down people rant thing. So how does it feel to have been the one who took down Destiny?
Pretty shit, actually.
I'm only joking with that, by the way.
I was trying to have a chill kind of conversation there. And I think, like, he'd already had people going at him all fucking day and he was really pissed off and was just off on one, Yeah. And I gave him the chance to, like, walk it back. Like, after the clip that gets shared, I say, wait, really? You think that blah, blah, blah? And he sort of doubles down on it. So, like, I don't know. I was really disappointed because I have a good relationship with Destiny, but, like, that was just it was an incredibly fucking stupid thing for him to say, and obviously the fallout of it for him has been fucking huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so you say you're friendly with him. Do you think there's utility in the way he approaches things? Because he doesn't quite do the same sort of activism, deprogramming type thing that Vosh does. He does a more just sort of, well, streamer thing of just talking to people, doesn't he? Do you think there's more utility in that approach to it?
Well, I mean, I don't think Vosh and Destiny are actually that different at all. Like Vosh would go on the fucking kill stream and shit and debate Nazis. Destiny's been on the kill stream and debated Nazis. I personally don't think we should debate Nazis. We should deny them any platform at any fucking opportunity. But, you know, there is a certain amount of utility, like I said earlier, to countering alt-right propaganda, and that's the sort of medium that they chose to do it in, by going in and debating like right-wing and far-right people. And that's why, like, Destiny was mentioned in that article as being somebody who de-radicalizes people from the far right, right?
Yeah.
And I don't see there's not a huge amount of air between these two people for me, at least in terms of like how they operate and what their Vosh claims the de-radicalizer mantle much more willingly than Destiny does. But yeah, I think they both kind of serve a similar function in their audiences and their fan bases sort of point of view.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much air between them. Obviously, you know, Vosh ostensibly leftist, Destiny some kind of soc-dem liberal person, right? But we're not talking about political positions here. We're talking about their function with regards to countering alt-right propaganda and trying to move people out of extremism.
Yeah.
I think they function very similarly. What do you think are the differences there?
Well, like I say, I think Vosh actively tries to be a de-radicalizer. I think he tries to focus on that. And like you say, I think the fact that they're both streamer debate bros means they effectively operate the same way. But I think Destiny's, because he's less of a leftist, if that makes sense, like he's more of a liberal kind of a guy, doesn't see it as de-radicalizing as such, because he doesn't. Because I think Vosh, at least in theory, wants to radicalize them, but just the other way, if that makes sense. Like he wants to radicalize them to the left, whereas Destiny just doesn't.
Sorry, carry on. I've talked a lot.
No, I have a guest on to speak. So, I mean, if you have a thing to say the thing.
This is something that I touched on very, very lightly in my thread. If I can just go to it, actually. There was the very last part of my thread, I mentioned something where I said, here we go. Yeah, we want to free them from the coercive control that kept them where they've been. We want to free their minds from that as much as possible, so they're free to make their own choices, judgments, and decisions. Not try to indoctrinate them into whatever leftism you're pushing.
Yeah.
Like, to me, there does seem to be a certain element of like, we need to have. Oh shit! I think I said something else a little earlier in the thread as well. Like, trying to push them as far left as Vosh ostensibly is, or I am, is like handing an alcoholic vodka instead of his favorite beer and telling him to go easy, right?
Yeah.
Like, the sort of drug, the addiction there is like is ideology, right? And it's the relationship you have with ideology, which, you know, we could go into a long fucking conversation, but I'd just say, like, if you look up like Lifton's 8 criteria of thought reform, right? That's a good example of like the kind of social environment that somebody is part of when they're part of one of these like heavily ideologically driven groups, and the reward and punishment systems that are in place for them as well.
Yeah.
So things like, you know, the demand for purity is a good example. This is one of the 8 points, right? The group adopts a black-white moral outlook, and the world is divided into good and bad. And there's very little space for the nuances and complexities of human morality. leftists can be as guilty of this as right wingers, and it can be, and all of these things, right, that sort of are outlined in Lifton's eight criteria of thought reform are manners by which critical thinking, independence of thought and action, these things are abridged. And as an anarchist, and I hope as just a humanist in general, right? I want people to have autonomy. I don't want them to come into a different space and just act that way because they're kind of like it's enforced on them by the milieu that they're part of. And I also think it's really, really dangerous to do that because the incentives are really, really bad in those environments as well, right? So the demand for purity is like, it's not just that, there's good and evil or whatever, but like it's that people always strive towards like higher and higher levels of purity. And when you get these really closed off, heavily ideologically focused groups, it can lead to people trending towards ridiculous levels of hyperbole and potentially violent and destructive actions, right? And I think if you take a neo-Nazi because neo-Nazis a lot of them cult hop anyway, right? Like a lot of them cult hopped to end up where they are. They might have gone to like the incel movement or like jihadism or like whatever.
I was about to say, I saw a fantastic documentary about a neo-Nazi who became an Islamist. He said, look, I can still hate women, I can still hate Jews, I can still hate gays. Yeah. It's fine. Like it's they do.
But I don't think it's necessarily just like the hate of specific groups. Like those are the groups that they've been taught to hate. It's a hatred of the other, right? And for leftists, it's like you've got the people in the in-group, the leftists, the good people who have the good ideology, and the people who are outside that are ignorant and steeped in sin and should be either shunned or destroyed or
liberals.
Unless by some way they can be convinced to be a part of your group, right? And I think taking somebody from just like one environment to another where they've been all these kind of like cult-like incentives, they're much more likely to engage with a new heavily ideological social group in the same way as they engaged with their old social group, right? So I literally do think it's dangerous to just be like, you were a Nazi? Well, now you're a communist, right? Because communists can do really fucking dumb and violent and evil shit in the name of communism just as much as Nazis can. Well, I mean, maybe not just as much as Nazis can, but at least on an individual level.
Yeah.
That dude did, after all, shoot that Patriot Prayer guy in the fucking head in the street, right? Like,
absolutely.
And so I definitely think it's dangerous to take somebody from one cultic environment and put them into another heavily ideological environment that features. I have to be really careful with my words here because people are going to be like, "Oh, you're accusing Vosh of being a cult leader," and I'm not. But
don't drink his Kool-Aid. Just don't.
Yeah, in every ideologically focused group, I think that a certain amount of coercive control exists, and the problem is working out how much of that coercive control is justified and healthy. And I think we very often overstep the line into for example, people trying to attain higher levels of purity by having the most leftist takes, right? And then encouraging their followers to attack or shun anybody who sort of falls short of that, high purity level leftist take, right? A lot of that kind of activity I see happening a lot of the time, I think. Does that make sense, or am I just fucking waffling at this point?
No, I think that does make sense, and I think there's, like you say, if you just take a toxic person from one extreme environment to the other, they're just going to be a different type of extreme toxic person.
Yeah.
And I fear with some people, and I'm not accusing Vosh or any individual of doing this, but I think the kind of debate bro style of deprogramming, or whatever particular term people want to use for it, is that if you don't challenge the bigoted beliefs they have as well, you can just transpose that into your new ideologies as well, because you essentially end up with just a neo-Nazi who is also now a Marxist, if that makes sense. Like, you've just added Marxist economics to a pre-existing package of bigoted ideas.
And I do worry about the new crop of like leftist, like political YouTubers and political communities, in that a lot of them seem to operate in very much the same fashion as like the atheist community, and then the skeptic sphere, and then the anti-SJW sphere, where it's just like, it's pick a group of people who are dumb and bully them in order to make yourself feel better, look like you have all the correct takes and stuff, and cultivate a following that is going to do the same. And I don't think that we should be like trying to promote leftism just in order to be able to shit on the rightoids, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and
at least they're aiming at people who probably deserve it, rather than like, I don't know, poor Trigglypuff who was just really fucking upset that Milo was speaking at her college, right?
Yeah.
At least we're kind of pointing it in the direction of people who genuinely have really fucking harmful and dangerous beliefs. But at the same time, like, the motivation shouldn't be like, oh, I want to destroy these people or fuck over these people in order to make myself feel better. It should be, I want to make life better for the people around me, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, I think the fact that they're following the same or similar paths to previous groups that have sort of risen and fallen in social media limelight, I think is partly down to the algorithm, right? It works. It's what sells. It's what gets clicks. It's what, gets the super chats in and all the rest of it. And so there's that incentive to do the same harmful bullshit, but just from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah. It's just the same old anti-SJW bullshit cloaked in a leftist perspective. It's like, this ideology allows me to seem more intelligent, more knowledgeable than my opposition.
Yeah.
And sometimes it falls short, right? Because it means that if you're operating from that kind of perspective, you're going to be much more resistant to like criticism and learning, and the idea that you might fuck up sometimes as well, right? Like, people have to protect their egos because their brand is built on being right, and these other people that they're attacking constantly being wrong. And if they're ever wrong, it kind of undermines the whole thing.
Yeah.
And everybody's wrong. I've probably been wrong a couple of times during this conversation.
No, I don't allow wrong things on my channel. We've both been absolutely perfect. Yes. So, well, again, not to cause drama, but as Lottie said it, I'll just quote Lottie Blix last night when she said that shoe on head was sus in their eyes. Yeah, having mentioned that the kind of idea of the anti-SJW is essentially thing being repackaged from a leftist perspective, I think there are a lot of people who feel that maybe Shoe on Head has done that. I wonder what your take is on that perspective.
Specifically on Shoe, I don't engage with her enough to have a solid judgment. I've seen her say some dumbass shit on Twitter though, so I'm not like on board with with whatever she's pushing right now. I think if I like spent more time looking at her, I might be able to have a more cohesive opinion. But sorry.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. But I think a lot of people think there's a certain amount of.
I think it's a fair worry, especially somebody who's spent like their entire career basically doing just that, right? Like, going from sort of anti-feminist to sort of toying with the alt-right to now like doing the sort of like fuck liberals thing. Like, Is there a difference between fuck liberals when you're saying it from the anti-SJW's perspective to the like Voshite woke scold suck perspective? Is there a difference between? I'm not 100% sure if there's like any meaningful difference, at least in like motivation. I don't know.
Yeah, and not necessarily Shu herself, but I get the feeling that some of the people that are being quote unquote de-radicalized are acting, whether intentionally or otherwise, as sort of Trojan horses for right-wing nonsense into left-wing spaces.
Yeah, it really the whole woke scold arc really like that shit really disturbed me, you know?
Yeah,
That was
absolutely.
very, you know, I mean, woke scold was a term that was like taken from Ben Shapiro anyway, right?
Oh yeah, that's far right
like,
garbage. If you use the term woke scold unironically around me, fuck off. Just fuck off.
But it's emblematic of an issue that's been present in like leftist circles for a long time, which is the sort of like class reductionist versus id pol perspective. And you know, I'm not calling Vosh a class reductionist because he disavows that shit as well, but he does believe that there's a certain group of people who are so obsessed with identity politics that they take it, you know, too far and they're damaging and should be excised from the left. I think he's called them subhuman on multiple occasions as well, which is like alarming rhetoric too. So I think like just taking and repackaging the right's rhetoric and the way the right behaves is not conducive to creating like like an inclusive movement that acts in the interests of like all these marginalized communities, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely, yeah. I think that's definitely true. Yeah, that's. I mean, I don't think necessarily the creators themselves are doing that. I think they, again, it's sort of. I think the thing I remember from, if you remember the original alt-right pipeline web thing that came out. Do you remember the article, the study that came out with the weird connecting bits?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever it was fucking called, the alt-right pipeline study. Anyway, the one thing that really interested me from that wasn't necessarily the connections bit, which looked a bit weird, like the community meme where he's a conspiracy theorist. Anyway, was the idea that it's not just that the creators radicalize their audiences, but audiences will radicalize the creator as well, because they respond to that reaction.
I'm not saying that like, oh, it's a conscious grift and they're just doing this to like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's so many pressures and so many social interactions and you know, so many beliefs that inform people to maybe think that one kind of path is better than another. One of the common beliefs that I hear expressed among like leftist creators is the right is so much better at coalition building, right? And this is one of those things that I think comes from just literally not spending enough time looking at the actual right and just looking at like content creators on the fucking internet, right?
Yeah.
Like your fucking Sargon of Akkad fucking, I don't know. I don't look at a lot of them nowadays because they're all fucking idiots, but just seeing how they all go on each other's shows and all this sort of shit, right?
Yeah.
But if you look a little bit deeper, you'll find that the right has so many fucking schisms, you know, and the deeper you get into the right, the more open those schisms are. You know, you've got between like Christian identitarians and fucking pagans and like even further like the fucking Satanists and the accelerationists and movementarians and you know, and then zoom out a little bit and there's all this fucking drama. Like how many of those fuckers ratted on each other from the J6 riots? Like,
oh yeah, they were.
Like, yeah, exactly.
There were more backs than knives available to stick them in. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right? So, like, the idea that they're amazing at coalition building and that the left is always divided is because you're in the left. So you see the arguments that go on in the left, right? And unless you're heavily embedded in the right, you're not seeing the arguments that are going on in the right.
Yeah.
Right.
A fine example. Sorry, someone brings up. I did a stream last night. I don't know if you saw the horrific debate.
Oh, I didn't watch it. I used to be, I would say friends. I used to be acquaintances with Blair White, and I can't watch her anymore because every time I see her, I just feel horrible for her. Like
no, well, don't watch this then because it will make you feel more horrible for her than ever before. her and Carolyn Borisenko did a debate with John Doyle and Lauren Witzke. Who's this? I mean, she's fucking evil. Anyway, and again, if anyone wants a perfect example of how the right isn't coalition building and the schisms are dangerous and painful, that would be it. Because some of the transphobic abuse Blair not just had to suffer, but tolerated and just accepted. I mean, it was fucking tragic.
I felt bad to watch that shit. To be clear, I was like acquaintances with her back when she was like kind of liberally, and we were both on the same political forum. But like, yeah, I just fucking hate seeing any trans person go through that bullshit, and she keeps putting herself through it in order to try and find acceptance within a movement that will never fucking accept her because it's like, you know, just diametrically opposed to her existence. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, just horrific. But yeah, the right aren't fucking interested. Again, and even if you just look at the internet stuff, the fact that the Groypers, the Nick Fuentes people, will go to Charlie Kirk events and like scream at them for supporting sodomy and such. Like, there's the idea that the right are better.
Even within the same organisations, I mean, look at the difference between like the Proud Boys Uncensored or the Proud Goys, whatever they want to fucking call themselves, and Enrique Tarrio's Proud Boys, right? Like, same organisation, one is kind of civic nationalist, and the other half of it is like full-on 1488 white power shit, right? And that's the same fucking organisation, and there's clashes between them. But I think the point of bringing this up was to say, like, so there's this one belief, right, which like then informs a whole bunch of other actions that I think there is a certain clique of content creators who've been like, the right is so much better at coalition building, therefore we ought to take right-wing tactics, behavior, mannerisms, blah, 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 right, and use them on the left as a way to build a coalition of the left. And it just doesn't work because, you know, that foundational assumption is incorrect, right? Yeah. And also because, like, what works for the right is not necessarily going to work for the left because we have very different goals, and it's, you know, it's like it's very easy to rapid fire bullshit. It's not as easy to debunk it, as I'm sure somebody in the sphere of debunking things knows, right? Yeah. Like, you can spend 10 minutes debunking one fucking claim that took somebody, you know, a couple of seconds to say.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Well, indeed.
The sides aren't equal, so the same tactics won't necessarily work because your goals aren't equal.
Indeed, and sort of on the note of being easy to spew out shit that takes ages to debunk, it would be remiss of me to have you on and not talk about some trans stuff, because that's the only thing you can talk to trans people about, isn't it, on the internet?
Oh, right, yeah. Sure.
So, see what I did there? I satirised myself, because I am going to talk about trans stuff now. I'm very clever. I'm very clever. Yes. I think you were aware of Graham Linehan's amazing display in front of the Lords the other day. How did you feel that went?
I streamed it.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I was watching it live, although I spent a lot of time just talking over him.
That's probably best.
Debunking.
Yeah.
and just generally, because, you know, it's hard to listen to. It's hard to listen after years and years of dealing with Graham Linehan's fucking bullshit. It's like, do I really want to hear him say the same shit that he always says? But I think it was just fucking hilarious how he ended up in front of the Lords talking about you know, free speech and wherever it was, like trying to create a better discourse on the internet is essentially what this communications committee is set up for. And he basically just like whined about how he'd been banned from Twitter for harassing people. I think there's one moment in it, I can't remember the quote verbatim, but essentially one of the Lords says, if all these platforms have come to the same conclusion that you're harassing people, I find it incredible that they would all come to the same conclusion that you're basically like, yeah, everybody thinks you're a cunt. Don't you think there's, you know, no smoke without fire, mate?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, if everyone has the same opinion of you, you're the common denominator there. You know? Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me saying cunt. That's just...
Oh no, I'm a massive cunt, and and I say it on this stream often. And Americans don't like it, but that's.
Well, I think you're a right good cunt.
Well, thank you. I likewise think you are a proper nice cunt. So it's all good, people.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Awesome.
Anyway, well, that will have annoyed a lot of people for various reasons. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
So yes, Graham Linehan. He was. Oh my god, he was so pathetic.
He's a
But
knobber.
yes, yeah.
It's so frustrating because how does he end up in front of the Lords in the first fucking place, right? Like the two people that are talking there are Graham Linehan and what's her first fucking name?
Helen Staniland.
Helen Staniland, right? And I don't know, like, unless you're really involved in turf shit, you probably won't have heard the term the Staniland question.
I've heard of it, but I couldn't remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah. So the Staniland question is something that turfs are just pushing people to ask in general to try and promote this question. And it's basically, do you want a man with a penis in a changing room with your daughter? Right? Like that's basically the question.
Right.
And obviously there's a million different reasons why this is fucking just dumb, right? Like, but she was the author of that, and she, asked it repeatedly and often, and was eventually just banned from Twitter for like that and a whole bunch of other transphobic nonsense. But you have two of the worst fucking turfs in the UK. Like, when I say the worst, I mean the most like aggressively transphobic turfs, not just like people who are like, oh, I don't know, like women's sports seems a bit unfair, right? Like not those people, but people who are like aggressively fucking transphobic, who have engaged in harassment campaigns against trans people, showing pre-transition photos, encouraging people to go after others, even coining questions terms and creating propaganda in order to like not just discredit the trans rights movement, but to deliberately vilify, demonize, and hurt trans people, right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I
like
say like
activist transphobes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So just these two incredibly virulent transphobes, like how do they end up there? How does Graham Linehan end up on fucking Newsnight comparing us to Nazi doctors, right?
Well, because he's famous and white, so that's allowed. And secondly, have you seen the members of the House of Lords? They make Graham Linehan look like a fucking dove. Like some of them are fucking scum. I mean, just genuinely, like I wouldn't wipe them off my shoe if it was shit. I'd just burn the shoes. Yeah. Like
I mean, you got Baroness Nicholson's a pretty famous fucking turf. She's in the Lords. Yeah.
Well, these are all 90-year-old people from a time when homosexuality was illegal, so trans stuff will just blow their fucking mind. These people don't know what the fuck's going on.
Yeah, and I mention this a lot actually because like people outside the UK won't know, but the year that I was born, 1988, was the year that Section 28 came into effect. Not went out, came into effect.
Yep.
And for the American audience, Section 28 is it's very similar to the Russian and anti-gay propaganda law, right? It's like no. Fuck.
You can't.
I'm trying to remember the exact wording because it's important. But
yeah, something like you can't promote.
Public institution can promote the pretense. That was it. Promote homosexuality as a pretended family relationship. Yes, was drafted under like Margaret Thatcher's government.
It was.
And the last place in the UK that Section 28 was repealed was the Isle of Man, and that was in 2006. So I basically grew up under this shit, right? And then,
are you Manx then?
Am I Manx?
As in from the Isle of Man?
Oh no, I'm not. No.
Oh, sorry. When you mentioned that and said I grew up under it, I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Oh no, the last place it was repealed was the Isle of Man in 2006. I think it was repealed in England and Wales in 2000. I want to say 2004, but I might be wrong on that. It might be 2003. At any rate, for a significant amount of my childhood, this was in effect, right? Basically, for my whole schooling, the school was not allowed to teach me that gay people existed and were okay, right? And this created a horrible environment of homophobia, which for a queer kid growing up fucking sucked, right? And it sucked for the adults as well, because, you know, if you came out as gay while you were in any kind of job that had anything to do with children, you'd pretty much guaranteed lose your fucking job and probably have a column in the Daily Mail talking about how you're a pedophile, right?
Yeah.
It was that bad. And so, you know, after 2000 between 2003 and 2006, when this went out, you know, I would have been about 15, 16 or whatever. I came out as like, as femme genderqueer, which is the term that I used for myself originally, when I was 20. You know, so incredibly homophobic environment, blah, blah, blah. Things start getting a little bit better. I'm kind of out and, you know, stuff isn't amazing, but like, it's okay. And then about 5-6 years ago, we have the consultation on Gender Recognition Act reform, which allows the far right in America to kind of stick its fucking oar in, drive a wedge, you know, use our existence as a wedge issue and basically skyrocket British turfism into existence. You know, hate crimes against trans people quadrupled in the last 5 years, right? So it's really weird to me to see this shit replay with the same fucking rhetoric from Section 28 now being used, you know, after me having like a short respite where I was like, oh, I can come out, I can be nice, everything can be, you know, everybody's being more accepting and everything. And then it feels to me like the environment has got a lot more hostile and toxic towards trans people in the UK over the last like 6 years. Because before, if somebody clocked you as trans, they'd be like, oh, hey, that's a bit weird. Like, why do you do that? Why are you dressed up as a woman, mate? You know, it'd be like that. And you'd be able to like sit down and just have a conversation with them, basically. You'd be like, oh, well, you know, it's just how I feel comfortable, how I live my life, you know. It's a lot better for me. And, you know, and by and large, they'd be like, oh, that's a little bit strange, but okay, mate, you know, carry on about your day, right? They'd ask questions. But and some of those would be intrusive and inappropriate questions because ignorant people ask intrusive and offensive questions, right? But it wouldn't be through like a great degree of malice, right? Whereas now, if somebody clocks you as trans, they don't ask questions because they already fucking know. They already have their opinion on like, you know, what you are, why you're trans, blah, 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 right?
Yeah,
and
they've already like, culture warred it. Yeah.
Or you're a pervert or whatever, or they're okay with you being trans, or actually one of the most annoying ones is like, oh my God, you're so brave. Fucking hell, I'm just trying to do my shopping, lady. You know?
Condescension is always fun.
But they already have a fucking opinion, right? Yeah. And that kind of
because trans people have been fed through the meat grinder of the culture war now.
Yeah, exactly. And we still are in it. And in the United States, I think it's, you know, it's our turfism. Our turfism is being adapted for an American audience right now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
By being injected with like American-style anti-Semitic world cabal transhumanism conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Can I get some globo homos in the chat, please, people? Globo homo unite. Absolutely. I'm reclaiming the word. Fuck it, it's happening. Right. So someone says in the chat on the point, what are your opinions on the Gender Recognition Act in general?
So the point of changing this legislation was to make it easier for trans people to get a birth certificate, right?
Yeah.
My opinion on the Gender Recognition Act reform is that actually, like getting a birth certificate, it is important to some people because it's important to people who want to marry, and it's important for a couple of other reasons. But it's not like this massive win, this massive advance that will somehow, you know, make us like, you know, on equal footing with everybody else in society, right? And the TERFs tried to portray it as doing far, far more than it did. right? They're like, oh, well, somebody with a gender recognition certificate will be able to go into the women's bathroom now. And it's like, we've been doing that for fucking years, love. Like, nothing's going to change based on this new legislation. All we want is for the Gender Recognition certificates to be easier to get, because the prior and basically the same process still exists now, because they haven't changed it significantly even after all this bullshit. Was you had to live in the gender that you identified as for 2 years. A panel of judges had, a panel of cis judges who'd never met you had to review whatever evidence you could provide of that and say that you had done that, right? You had to have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. You had to pay a significant amount of money. This is one of the things that has changed, actually. They've reduced the cost of it. It's still prohibitive for a lot of trans people, because trans people in general are poor. But they did reduce the cost a little. You had to get spousal consent. That's still there.
Fucking Christ.
If you want to change your gender marker on your birth certificate, if you're married, your spouse has to consent to that, which obviously can throw up a whole bunch of different really abusive situations. If you're in an abusive relationship with your spouse, they can literally deny you the right to have your gender legally recognized. So there was all that shit, right? Like, we just wanted that to change. We didn't want a panel of cis judges who had never fucking met us before to judge whether we were trans. The vast majority of trans people don't agree that you need gender dysphoria in order to be considered transgendered. And so that being a requirement, we wanted that thrown out. We didn't want, like, live in your chosen gender for 2 years before you whatever, right? Like, and it's not like these changes haven't been made in other countries as well. Yeah. Like, these changes are made in Ireland. They're made in like Sweden, and a couple of other European countries, and none of the fucking doomsaying that the TERFs put forward, like, this wave of men entering women's changing rooms, like, to sexually assault them or whatever. It hasn't happened. It doesn't exist in the places where this legislation's gone through. So it was just, essentially they misrepresented what the bill did, just like Bill C-16 in Canada, right? Yeah. Same shit, right? Just add gender identity to the list of protected classes under law, which doesn't mean like you are a protected class person, right? It's like gender identity, sex, race, really, those are the classes, right? And you can't discriminate against somebody on those bases.
Yeah, so like you can't sack someone, or you can't deny them housing or whatever,
And JBP gets on the fucking scene and starts going, "Oh, they're going to send me to prison for mistaking somebody's gender."
Well, but to be fair to him, an entirely massive 0 people have been arrested under C-16, so he was clearly correct with his fear-mongering hatred.
Yeah.
Absolute scum.
I feel bad for all those 0 people.
They're exactly at RIP. Free the Canadian 0. Absolutely. Yes, but on the point you
sorry.
No, I was just going to say, on the point that you mentioned, this again, I think shows the extent to which the British scene for the LGBT QIA people has been completely fucked in recent times. The government has created a hostile environment, quote unquote, according to their now former LGBT advisor, who has quit over the government stalling, because
two of them have quit now, actually.
Oh, is there 2? Oh, good lord. Okay, that makes sense though. But the government currently, there's a bill trying to be passed through the Parliament to make it completely illegal to do gay conversion therapy, right?
Yeah, we watched the debate over that the other day as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I'll have to go and watch both of those then. No, seriously, because that sounds genuinely interesting.
Over that a lot less, but we watched the committee debate over that. I didn't watch the debate in the actual Houses of Parliament. I don't think.
Well, that's best, because MPs are fucking idiots. Anyway, the government are dragging their feet. They're kind of dancing around like they don't want to appear to be too homophobic, but they're also not passing the fucking law.
Yeah, they did this like 4 years ago as well.
Yeah.
So this is the exact. So they said, we need to study this area a little bit and work out what kind of steps we can take. And like 4 years later, it's like, right, we want you to pass some legislation, pretty unanimous from like the British public and a whole bunch of MPs and so on. And the government are like, yeah, but we need to we need to analyze this and see what kind of like legislation we can probably put in place at some. So I don't know, maybe expect a bill sometime around 2030.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've got a cat.
That's all right. It's not your fault.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway, yes. So yeah, they've now was it Jane Ozani maybe has now resigned for that. And the quote, the exact quote was what was it? Because you mentioned Section 28, and they said something about that somewhere. Oh, I can't see the fucking quote anywhere. Anyway, but basically they were wondering, they were worried that they were going back to the Section 28 days. Here we go. So here we go. Right. There are many.
I think what's really, really revealing about this is that so many people mentioned in the committee debate that trans people should not be excluded from this bill, and it seems to me that this is the main point of contention. It has nothing to do with like fact finding or anything like that. It's like we want to remove trans people from the bill, but we don't want to say we want to remove trans people from the bill, so we're just going to scuff our feet over it.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was just going to read the quote from Jane Ozan, who had previously been the government's or one of the government's advisors on LGBT issues. She said, there are many who fear that we are going back to the days of Thatcher, the days of Section 28. The language that I hear from them is of us being woke or of being allowed lobby groups, and what they don't seem to understand is the reason we have to shout is because we are hurting, because there are people who are vulnerable and are going unheard and unnoticed. I do not support this Tory government, sadly, have the best wishes of the LGBT... Sorry, I do not believe this Tory government, sadly, have the best wishes of the LGBT community at heart. Instead, instead we seem to have a Trump-esque mode of operation where they're listening to the right-wing evangelicals and those, frankly, who want to take us back.
Yeah.
That's pretty...
I agree with that completely, and I'm obviously very passionate about this, not only being trans myself, but like...
a human.
I lost human being. I lost a friend last year as well, who was still on the waiting list to be seen by the GIC and to get on hormones. And it just makes me so fucking... Since she died, I've been nothing but angry. Before that, I was kind of like, I was sad and a bit worried for myself and for my friends. And like when she died, I was just like, shit, like I can't get over this anger that there's not people out on the fucking streets like screaming at the fucking government about this, right? You have that shit for like the Black Lives Matter, and I'm not comparing our fucking struggles, right? Like they're very different things, but one of the ways in which they're different is that the shooting of Black people in the streets is a very visceral, visual thing, right? It's very what do you call it? Like it's a spectacle, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to like.
No, it's like it's in your face.
But it's like it's very in your face. It's very
It's often literally on.
Engage with it.
It's literally on camera often. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's a very violent act. It's very shocking. Whereas like the slow, banal, negligent murder, I would say, of our government towards trans people by simply putting them on 5-6 year fucking waiting lists, trying to deny or actually denying children healthcare at this fucking point, and generally not putting legislation or initiatives in place to encourage trans people to be able to be better employed, better educated, whatever, right, to improve their conditions.
Yeah.
It's a very banal kind of murder. It's not fucking shooting you in the street. Although trans people actually are much more likely to be accosted by the police. I was accosted by the police walking through London once because they assumed I was a prostitute because they clocked me as trans. It's just like, oh, a trans person walking along the street must be a prostitute, right? Like, which was fucking insane to me. Not that I've got anything against sex workers, but I was really pissed off at being like,
Look,
just,
the police are just
trying to do me shopping, love.
The police are just fucking shit at everything.
Yeah. They fucking suck.
If they're not murdering cis women, they're accosting trans women, they're fucking shooting black people. What the fuck? What good do they do? Holy shit. Sorry, go on. No, it's a different matter. Go on, you were talking.
No, okay, friend. Anyway, so... But yeah, it's not the spectacle of a black dude being shot in the street. It's the slow fucking murder through negligence, through oppressive conditions, through poverty, through stirring up hate through the fucking media, through it's not just a hostile environment in the government, it's a hostile environment in the country where you can't access healthcare, where you're scared to go out of your fucking house because the media has fomented so much fucking hatred and fear around trans people, you know? And it's this sort of shit that slowly fucking kills trans people. It's, it's not as...
Well, I thought with like you say, when it was just negligence, it seemed like a kind of passive mass murder. Whereas now, it's becoming like an active mass murderer, is what it is.
Yeah,
now,
it really does feel that way.
Because it's not negligence, or it's not incompetence from government that's doing this. They're actively siding with people who are campaigning to ensure trans people die.
Sorry, I keep interrupting, but you say a thing and I'm just like, yes! But our Labour Party fucking was working with, I forget what the name of the group, was it Women's Place UK? It was one of them.
Yes.
It was one of them who had in their stated goals the elimination of transgenderism. Our left-wing party is working with a group with that as their stated goal in order to work out how to, quote, solve the conflict between trans rights and women's rights, right?
Well, the Labour Party under Keith Starmer aren't a left-wing party. They're doing flag-shagging, anti-trans, anti-immigrant stuff. They're Tory light. Fuck them.
And this is why I get so fucking pissed off at people who, like, shout on Sean for his take of like, oh, I'm not voting for the Labour Party, because I'm probably not going to either, right? Actually, I want the Labour Party to fuck, and you'll probably disagree with me, okay? And that's fine. We can have a conversation about that. But for me, I want the Labour Party to fucking lose under Starmer. I want them to suffer such crushing fucking defeat, right? That Keir Starmer loses his fucking leadership, and that, we can have a left-wing Labour again, maybe. The Labour Party is not my friend. It wants to kill me as much as the Tories do.
Well, that's the thing. It's as much, and again, this white cis male privilege may be talking, but on a personal level, I look at it less as who's going to be prime minister, because we don't directly elect that fucker anyway. I think of it: am I going to have a Labour or Tory MP? Because I live in a Labour-Tory sort of marginal, mostly Labour though. And I think to myself, well, the Labour guy's probably going to be shit. But, like, the Tories are one step away from, like, enacting legislation to allow the rich to hunt the poor on horseback. Like, it's madness what this country's become.
The point is, though, is that, like, we've got to the point. So for me, right, as a trans person, we've got to the point where the left-wing party is working with an organization who specifically states they want to eliminate transgenderism, right? We've got to that point where, like, the Tories might be worse in their outspoken kind of bigotry and some of their policies, but, like, ultimately, what is the difference between eliminate transgenderism and eliminate transgenderism, right? For at least for me, like, there isn't a huge difference. And there are other kind of, like, social policies, welfare, whatever, like, stuff that will affect me, sure, but not quite as much as this. And it's just like, I don't know how long I can keep rewarding the Labour Party for going down this path of just
No,
constantly
yeah.
agreeing with the TERFs, you know?
No, I completely get that, and I will. At best, I would be holding my nose and putting my X in the Labour box, but and then we'll have to wait and see.
If you have two parties who want to commit a genocide, and one party is gonna give a better benefits package to the poor, like maybe it's time to really start thinking about how you can throw a fucking wrench in the system and force one of those parties to maybe not do a genocide.
Well,
right?
what I would again, this is going to sound like mealy mouthed, but I would suggest that Labour, whilst pandering to TERFs, wouldn't actually. I don't think they dilly dally over getting rid of gay conversion therapy, for instance. I think they're actively in support of that bill, aren't they?
Well, I mean, it depends how much they end up being convinced by the TERF arguments that actually transgender ideology is engaging in conversion therapy of young lesbians and gays, making them trans instead of the gay people that they would otherwise be, right? That's one of the TERF arguments.
Yeah, the disappearing.
So it really depends.
The disappearing lesbians thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. And, well... We've got council elections, which is slightly separate, I suppose, in this year. But we haven't got a general election for a while, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Keith has a heart attack or something. You know? You never know.
Well, I'm not even sure if it's legal to wish that, but...
no, because I'm not saying that anyone should do anything. I'm just saying he has a heart, and heart attacks happen. So, maybe he could step down and be replaced by not a complete wanker. You know?
I wouldn't cry if it did happen. I'll put it that way.
No, but I might masturbate.
Jesus.
Just saying. No, well, look, because he's garbage. Any flag shagger can fuck off. I don't care what colour you put yourself in, whether you're red or blue. If you want to hump the flag and attack immigrants, and did you see the pay? Oh, it's so typical. For those who don't know, the Conservative Party budget had a 1% increase in pay for nurses and doctors and stuff, which is below the wage inflation, so it's actually a pay cut. And the Labour Party went, well, we're going to up it to 2.1%. Oh, just fucking kill me. Just kill me. What's the point? That's the best you can do. The unions are asking for 15%, by the way, just to give you an implication of where reality and the political establishment are. Just... You know, in case you were wondering.
It's 1% pay rise. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, extra 10 quid a month. Cheers.
Yeah. But don't worry, we did clap for them, so problem solved. Clearly.
True. Thank God we clapped for them.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I did clap at first because I thought it's like a nice communal thing. It's not hurting anyone, whatever.
Gets you out of the house during the pandemic.
Exactly, yeah.
Engaging with your neighbours.
Exactly, yeah. So I did it first, and then I thought to myself, this is wank. People are being convinced that this is doing something, and it isn't. Yeah. This is awful. The same people who were clapping for them a couple of months earlier had voted for the fucking Tory party. Yeah. And I felt like, I mean, obviously I never would denounce, but I felt like going fucking postal, frankly. I thought, you cheeky bastards. How fucking dare you?
It's weird. It seems to me like kind of a fuck up of strategy, right? It's that the Tories recognise that the NHS is like something that everybody fucking loves in this country, right?
Yeah.
And it's a source of national pride for many people. But they're constantly trying to undermine the pride in that institution so that they can get rid of it. But they recognise that they still have to pander to it because the nationalists that support them see that as like a point of national pride, you know. So it's very weird to me how like their supporters don't like look at that and go, hang on a second, you're telling us to clap for them, but at the same time you're like underfunding them, selling bits of them off to like private companies and shit. Like it's contradictory, right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, they have to pretend to like it because it's like the only thing that British people agree on is not dying's good. Should we do not dying? Okay, cool. So the NHS is like the only positively thought of thing in the entire country. But the Tories despise it, so they have to do a kind of we love the NHS while literally stabbing the NHS in the back constantly. It's what they've always done. It's what they always will do.
It's kind of fucking nauseating seeing Boris Johnson clap for the NHS, honestly.
Talking of people I want to have a heart attack.
and then it was clap for Boris Johnson, wasn't it? Do you remember when he got the COVID?
Yeah, I won't say what I'd like to clap and with what. The terms of service, Kev. Come on now, behave yourself. All I'll say is I wasn't rooting for Boris in the Boris versus COVID bash. You know what I mean? Like I was.
Yeah.
Who the fuck? What dopey shit would clap for that fucking cuckhead? Really?
Well, half the fucking country, my friend.
Oh, God, it's depressing. I fucking hate people, man.
Amazing, and that Jeremy Corbyn is a Kremlin-bought communist super soldier come to destroy the country.
Terrible anti-Semite.
And an anti-Semite, yeah.
Terrible
can't forget that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literal Nazi, actually. Literal Nazi Corbyn. Literal Nazi communist Corbyn.
Yes. I'm glad he didn't become Prime Minister because the situation... Think of it, we could have had 125,000 people dead in Britain because of COVID. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it? That'd be absolutely awful. Yeah.
Awful. And a year of fucking lockdowns.
Yeah. And 37...
Could have just done what, like, fucking, I don't know, like Vietnam or like... maybe not quite the same as South Korea because they were, like, heavily fucking authoritarian with some of their bullshit. But, like, you know, a lot of countries managed to get this shit under control very, very quickly and now are doing really well and are recovering economically, socially, have had very few deaths. And meanwhile, you know, we are continuing to have more and more cases and more people dead and more lockdowns and all that sort of shit. And, I mean, hopefully the vaccines work against the new variants, right? That's the real worry. It's like, oh, well, yeah, like Boris is banking on the vaccine saving us, but meanwhile, allowing all these transmissions, right, allowing the virus to like transmit from one person to another creates more and more opportunities for mutations. So,
yeah, but I mean, basically the government have given up trying to control it. They might as well just say, spit in the mouth of every old person you see. Fuck it. Have done with it.
And then the vaccines will sort it out, probably, hopefully, or we all die.
Well, 50-50, that sounds like a good, toss of a coin, that'll do. But we have wasted 37...
It's like every time you spit in the mouth of an old person, you're increasing the chance that the vaccines ain't going to work, because that's how mutations occur. They occur during reproduction, so they occur during transmission and the first couple of weeks of infection.
But you're just talking down the country. Post-Brexit, we can do anything. It's magic British spit in magic British old people's mouths.
Well, holy fuck. God. I mean, honestly, like, for Brexiteers, the COVID is almost a good thing, right? Yeah. Because now they can just blame all the troubles of Brexit on COVID.
Oh, yeah, no, Brexit
is perfect cover, but there's so many things that are going wrong that are specifically related to Brexit as well.
Yeah, but people are stupid. They vote for Boris Johnson. They don't fucking know this. They just think COVID, things went bad. I tell you, Brexiteers are the main beneficiaries of COVID. Because their entire worldview has crumbled around them, but COVID has deflected all of the blame.
Yeah, it saved them. It's not Brexit, it's COVID. And it's like, well... actually probably,
bit of both.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Like,
But we have pissed away £37 billion in public money into Tory friends' hands for a test and trace system that doesn't work at all. So
that shit was fucking obscene. How much were they getting paid an hour? I forget.
Ridiculous, unbelievable sum.
It was dumb amounts of money. I think they were paying something like 12k a day or something. It was ridiculous. I know the number 12 was in there somewhere. It might have been 1,200, but it was still an absurd amount of fucking money, and it didn't even do anything.
No, it still doesn't work.
Yeah,
they have people arriving from the Brazilian strain, as they're calling it. People from Brazil came in, but we didn't, because we blocked flights from Brazil. But not from Germany. So Brazilians flew to Germany and then into Britain, and it got here. And we didn't know where they'd come from where they were going, whether they had it, whether they'd been tested.
Thank God we got control of our borders, though, right?
Like I say, just go and spit in the mouth of everyone. It'd be over quicker. Just go and lick every door handle you see. It's the easiest way. It's euthanasia for the entirety of Britain.
I don't want to get COVID. It sounds frankly fucking awful.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky so far. Well, I want to say lucky. I've been extraordinarily isolated for the entire pandemic, pretty much, and it's driving me slowly fucking insane. I would like these lockdowns to end. I would like to get back to normal, honestly. I want to be able to go to the pub with my friends because, doing that once or twice a week was like one of the things that helped keep me sane. And, or, as sane as I can be. Yeah, and like losing those things for like a whole fucking year, like it's not good for anybody, it just isn't. In addition to the economic crisis, we are going to be dealing with a crazy fucking mental health crisis, which we are not set up for because the government has systematically underfunded mental health treatment and so on for ages. Treatment and research, and even with not fucking Margaret Thatcher, the other woman, Theresa May. The same woman basically, but just a few years later, Theresa May saying that they were going to put more of a focus on mental health and bring it up to par with physical health. That hasn't materialized. That's something and the government have been very good at doing this, is going, oh, we've had to put that on the back burner because of COVID. And it's really fucking weird to me how it's always the things that would be like good for people who are in dire straits that have to go on the fucking back burner, and not like, fucking bailouts for their mates. Right? Like, we can pass that shit. We can sit in Parliament and vote on an MP pay rise, but sorry guys, COVID, we can't introduce any sort of funding for mental health services or anything.
Yeah, because Britain's mental health system was already, I think the technical term is fucking shit. Before this, and like you say, there's going to be a fucking tsunami of mental health issues across the entire country because we know that isolation doesn't help people. So you had people who were already borderline needing significant help and intervention that weren't going to get it, that are now been tipped over the edge, and people who were perfectly fine who are now not perfectly fine. And
it's not just like isolation; it's fear as well. It's just the climate of fear, right? Like they saw a real uptake in like people with agoraphobia and anxiety disorders in what's the place where it all started? Wuhan.
China.
Yeah, Wuhan. After they finished the lockdown, they saw an uptake in people with agoraphobia and anxiety disorders. And it's because if it's always there in the back of your mind at the moment, right? Where it's like, and you might not think about it consciously all the time, but like every time you go to the shop, somewhere in the back of your mind, it's like, this thing that I touch could actually be the thing that kills me, right? That's not a fucking healthy way to think about anything.
Yeah, I've become slightly weird about it. Like I mean, washing your hands in general is a good idea, but you get back from the shops and straight away before you do anything, I'm not touching anything in my fucking house until my hands get washed.
yeah, just fucking OCD, right? So there's just that constant fear, and having that constant low-level fear in the back of your mind, I think, is like another thing that's going to drive people toward like it makes you snap eventually, right?
Yeah, there's only so much tension you can take. Yeah.
And so people end up with like anxiety disorders and all that sort of shit. Yeah. And as somebody who's suffered with anxiety disorders, a pretty severe anxiety disorder for like the last 6, 7, 8 years, I can tell you that shit ain't no fucking joke. All right. Yeah. It can get real bad, real quick. Yeah. And you have to stay on top of it, and having good clinical and therapeutic help available is so fucking important to helping people with those kinds of disorders live, healthy lives, healthy, productive lives, because it really can go, you really can hit fucking rock bottom where you're just like terrified to leave your house and having panic attack after panic attack, no way to deal with it, and that's not good quality of life. That isn't. Yeah. So indeed. we need that shit to be able to look after people.
Indeed. This has been one of the doomerest bits of conversation ever. Is there anything positive we can leave people with? Chocolate is really nice. There we go. That's your thought for the day.
Yeah.
There's nothing. No, the world's shit.
I often think of myself as the doomer person because I go on shows and we talk about really kind of like stuff that people think is kind of silly, like QAnon or flat Earth or like just conspiracy theorists and shit in general. And I help map out how these things are all sort of linked back to like old neo-Nazi conspiracy theories, drive wedges in families, cause people to commit horrendous acts of violence and things, and how actually we're not really addressing the problem and it's continuing to spread and get worse. And make predictions for the future about the increased risk of stochastic acts of terror and all that sort of stuff. So like I'm not very good at like doing the happy like everything's going to be fine thing. I think everything's not going to be fine, but I think it's really, really important to remember that because everything's not going to be fine, there are like things that you can do to make them better, things that we probably ought to do as a society to make them better, right? And for me, that's like mutual aid. That's like checking in with your neighbor. That's like trying to have the mindset of looking in your neighbor's bowl, seeing that it's empty, and not saying, well, that means that I'm doing okay because I'm doing better than my neighbor, but saying that, like, actually, that means that I need to help fill my neighbor's bowl, And those are the things that will get us through the shitty times.
You're talking about weed now, aren't you? Yeah?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was thinking like food, but sure, why not? Why not weed? But those are the things that will get us through the shitty times, is trying to foment like cooperative, healthy, helpful communities and relationships with the people around you. Online is lovely. You can help people out online. And if that's all you can do, then, whatever, find your community wherever you find it. But also in real life as well. You want to be able to knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey, can you lend me some sugar or whatever? That's and it's so fucking important that we try and connect with people now rather than trying to outcompete everybody around us.
Indeed.
And I think the shitty times incentivize people to pull together more. So that's my non-doomer take.
Cool. Well, as someone points out in the chat, in my Twitch chat, the positive is that MxVivianWulf spent time with us all today. That is.
Aww.
That's beautiful.
Very fucking cute.
Yeah.
All right.
Indeed. Okay. Well, I'll. Any final thoughts that aren't doomer as fuck?
Any final thoughts that aren't doomer as fuck? No, not really. I think I just kind of did the final thought thing, didn't I? Follow me on the Twitter. If you follow me on the Twitter, right, I've got this interview coming up with T. Krulos on Saturday. T. Krulos wrote a book called American Madness, and it's about the Phantom Patriot, who's this guy dressed up in a superhero costume to go raid the Bohemian Grove with the big owl statue. Yeah. He dressed up in a fucking superhero costume, took a shotgun and everything, and went to raid He didn't actually manage to do any harm. His flashlight failed him. It ran out of batteries, and he ended up bumping around in the woods and fell asleep in a cabin somewhere, woke up. The only act of actual terrorism he managed to commit was he set fire to the clubhouse, which was immediately doused by the sprinklers. So he didn't manage to do any crazy harm. But he wrote a book about that and about how that same strand of conspiracy theorism kind of like runs through American history and is sort of flaring up with QAnon today. So I'm going to be talking with him on Touring News channel at 4 p.m. EST on Saturday. And if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know, because I'll post about that. But also, you give me the followers and you give me the clout, and the clout is cool, right?
Yes.
more followers I have on Twitter, the easier it is for me to reach out to people like that and get interviews, which is what I really, really love doing. I like getting people who have expertise in the areas of cults and extremism and so on. Because as much as I read, I can't fucking read everything, and people have their own specific areas of expertise, and just bringing them on to like disseminate that information to people. So if you guys can help me do that by following me on Twitter, it costs you fuck all. I'd really appreciate it.
Yes, go and follow. All of the links are below to the YouTube, the Twitch, and Twitter. So go and follow MxVivianWulf, who is fucking badass.
All right. Have yourself a great day, Kev.
Will do.
Thanks very much for having me.
Take care.
Bye, chat. Look after yourselves.
Well, that was super dope. I enjoyed that muchly. Thank you to MxVivianWulf. Like I say, links are below. She is super awesome. Couple of quick bits from the Twitch. Thank you to everyone. Pandanus Rex subscribed 5 months. 5 whole months now. We're over halfway to the stream, baby, yo. They say, Roryista International. Indeed. Viva la Rory. Dark Danzoni gifted a sub to the Thinking Sabercat. Thank you very much. And Lil Money resubscribed with Prime for 3 months. Thank you to all of you, you awesome folk. Yes, you can go and follow me on Twitch and YouTube and all of that. All of my links are below. Super cool. I might be back later, just because I saw this is so dumb, but I saw a GIF of what's his fucking name again? Burger King. What's his fucking name? I've totally blanked. Thank you, MxVivianWulf. She's in the chat there. Yes. Caleb Moppin. Fuck me, I couldn't remember his bastard name. Anyway, just a gif of him saying cringe. It's very cringe. Cringe. And that amused me. And I thought, I haven't watched any of that fucking Dirtbox nonsense for a while, so I might come back and do that. Thank Dark Donzoni, legend, just gifted a sub to MxVivianWulf, to the Twitch channel. Thank you very much. You now get my 5 boring emotes. Mix, so enjoy, I suppose. Anyway, yes, so I might be back later for some nonsense. If I can't sleep, I might as well stream, is the way I look at it. So, yeah, I might do that. I might watch some Caleb Muppin nonsense, laugh at a tanky, because he's a fucking idiot. Caleb Muppin, his thoughts limes infrared. True. And they actually, Caleb Muppin and Infrared did a conversation together, and it was boring. It was really fucking boring. 2 tankies just going, yeah, Stalin was cool. Yeah, Mao was awesome. Yeah. Oh, fucking end, mate. What's the point, really? Rory Katz is lying on the bed. He's not going to be sick on this occasion, though, so that's good. Positive. Anyway, I'm done here. I'm just fucking rambling now. Yeah, thank you to MxVivianWulf enormously for coming on and being an interesting, thoughtful, nuanced perspective to the whole piece. And yes, the links are all below. Go and subscribe to all of my things. Go and click on all my social medias. Go and click on all of MxVivianWulf's stuff as well. All of the links appropriately are there below. And on Twitch, I'll kick you over to someone who is going on right now. Bad Bunny is awesome. So I will raid you into Bad Bunny because she is awesome. She's pretty awesome. Anyway. Just followed you on the Twitch machine. Oh, that's mixed. Yeah, go and follow all the things. And I will see you possibly later this evening at some point, or maybe tomorrow on Friday when I'll be back with Christy. We'll be doing some Racist White History Month and whatever's in the fucking news, basically. Just newsy stuff, you know. And yeah, no pass around.